Hi there, I'm Kate McClellan, and I've been a professional wedding planner for over 20 years now. I started Planning Collective when I noticed that though most couples are super excited about getting engaged, they quickly feel overwhelmed and intimidated by the actual process of planning their weddings. If left unchecked, this can lead to massive burnout and the urge to scrap all your plans and just elope. While this is totally normal, you don't have to sacrifice your sanity for your dream wedding. In the Wedding Planning Collective podcast, I'm going to share the processes, tips, and tools that all engaged couples like you need to feel confident, supported, and excited about your wedding plans again. Let's get started. Hey there, before we get to the episode, I have a quick question for you. Have you been unsuccessfully trying to shake that feeling that you're forgetting something when it comes to your wedding? You've got the Knot app and you've downloaded countless other planning checklists, but you just can't get rid of that sneaking suspicion that there's something you don't know yet. It's a very common feeling when it comes to wedding planning. So much so that I decided to put together a free resource to help get rid of what I call FOWO, the fear of wedding oversight. Yes, it does include that 12-month task checklist, but that's just the start. In addition to the ultimate wedding planning checklist, my new Don't Forget list also includes a wedding vendor checklist, your shopping list, a packing list for the wedding weekend, and a complete wedding item setup list to make sure that you are truly not forgetting anything when it comes to your wedding. And you heard me right, this list is free for you to grab right now. Just head over to planningcollective.com/forgetting and it's all yours. That's planningcollective.com/FORGETTING, and let's get rid of that FOWO together. All right, let's get on to the episode. Hey guys, Kate here. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Planning Collective podcast. For today's episode, you guys are running the show. Last week, I asked for submissions for your wedding planning questions over at Planning Collectively. If you don't follow me over on Instagram, that's where you're going to see future prompts for episodes like this. So today I am answering 8 of your wedding planning questions. Let's get right to it. First question. My wedding is April 11th, 2026. Is it too early to send out invitations this week? I'm super excited and I want to start getting RSVPs. A lot of family members have to travel 6+ hours to get here as well. I just want to know if there are any cons to sending them out 4.5 months before the wedding. TIA. All right. So this one, if you have listened to some of the podcast episodes in the past on invitation timing, you probably already know which direction I'm going to go with this answer. But asking for RSVPs at this point is definitely too early. And I understand the thought process behind it. As a planner, I wish we could know the exact RSVP count, the exact guest count from the second we start planning. The problem is when you ask for RSVPs too early, when you ask guests to give you an answer too early, it will inevitably end up in things changing. And as the wedding gets closer, like the final 2 weeks, you have people that either now their husband can make it and they couldn't commit before, or more likely you have people canceling because they didn't know about other either commitments or, things come up. Maybe they couldn't get off of work and they thought they could. So I see it happen all the time that when you ask for RSVPs too early, you're going to be dealing with a lot of shuffling. And in those final weeks before the wedding, let me tell you, that is the last thing you want to deal with. It is so frustrating to deal with either needing to add people into your guest count, into your seating chart, into the tables that you just spent hours trying to figure out. Or worse yet, you've already given your final count to your vendors and then someone drops out, meaning you're just totally out that money, that you can't get it refunded because they've already ordered the product and all of that for that guest being there. So as much as it pains me to say this, it is definitely way too early to be sending out invitations and asking for RSVPs. The good thing is this is exactly where Save the Dates came in. So I know that you really want to have that guaranteed number. Again, I feel it in my bones how much it would just make things so much easier if we could know from the beginning how many people were coming. It's just one of those things that when you're planning a wedding, you won't know your exact guest count until about a month before. and maybe not even until 2 weeks before. Here in Michigan, I should say that this is a caveat that I have heard that in the UK and in other countries, this timeline is very different. People send out invitations and get RSVPs like 6+ months in advance. And I wish that's how things worked here, but it is simply not. Here in the States, it is common practice for your vendors to need your final counts 10 to 14 days before the wedding, which I know if you're just hearing this for the first time, that sounds insane to only have your final counts 10 to 14 days before the wedding. But again, it is just the norm. Your vendors are going to have things in place to be able to work with you on how to get that count. Now, what I do recommend is that you set your RSVP due date 30 days before your wedding. And one asterisk to that is talk to your vendors, your caterer, your venue, whoever's dealing with the exact counts of your wedding. Talk to them about when they need their final count by, and then add 1 week to that. So again, usually it's about 30 days. I do hear sometimes that venues or other vendors will require 1 month. But again, locally here, it's usually 10 to 14 days before the wedding is when you have to give them that absolute final count for the event. So if you say 4 weeks, if your count is due 14 days before the wedding, you say that you need the RSVPs back 30 days before, and that gives you a couple of weeks to follow up with your guests that did not respond, because that is another beautiful part about wedding planning. People are not going to respond. It happens. Again, I wish there was a way around it, but human nature, blah, 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 it happens. So that gives you 2 weeks to follow up with your guests before you have to give your final counts. Again, the dates could change a little bit. Most importantly, talk to your food provider. So whether that is your venue, excuse me, your venue or your catering company, find out when you need to give them their final counts, and then add 1 to 2 weeks for when you need that RSVP due date by. Now, sending out the invitations, I know we're talking about RSVP counts. You want to give the guests 3 to 4 weeks with the invitation in hand before they have to send it back to you. So that's where we come up with the 6 to 8 weeks that you should be sending out your invitations. So 4.5 months before instead of 2 months definitely means you're going to get some changes and answers, especially this time of year when it might only be 4.5 months away. But let me tell you, April, especially being here in Michigan where we're just getting cold and snowy, it feels like a lifetime away. So a lot of times people won't know their plans, and their intentions might be great by responding and saying, yes, we're going to be there. But then when the planning becomes real, they may not, again, get off work, have someone to watch the kids, all of the things that get in the way in life. So I would recommend, if you haven't already, send out save the dates. Now is a perfect time to do that. Some people think that, because you're under 6 months, it's a little bit too late. Well, 6 to 9 months is ideal for save the dates to go out, or a little bit further out than that. I think you still, even if it's the form of a text, put together a cute graphic on Canva, maybe make it part of your holiday card if you're sending something out for the holidays, to say, hey, remember, save the date, so that those guests, especially the ones that are 6+ hours away, know that they can start making travel arrangements. If you have a wedding website, put that link on there so they can find their hotels, they can start making arrangements. But don't ask for an RSVP until the invites go out 2 months before. I know that's hard to hear. I know it's hard to hear. And I know there are people listening that are going to ignore it, that are going to say, that's ridiculous. We're sending ours out like now, a year in advance. And the world is not going to implode if you do that. This is wedding planning. Let's just be honest here. But I can promise you, it is going to save you headaches as the wedding gets closer if you follow this formula. So find out when your food vendor needs their final counts by, add 1 or 2 weeks to that, and that's when you should be asking for your RSVPs back. Okay, question number 2. For our seating chart, do you usually list each guest individually or keep them as couples together? So for example, Mr. and Mrs. Bob Smith, table number 1, or Mrs. Jane Smith, table 1, Mrs. Bob Smith, table 1. What looks cleaner and easier to read? Would love your opinions. So this question is going to be, I guess it depends on a few different variables. So let's talk through a few of those first. Uh, Guest count is going to make a big difference in this. If you have 150 plus guests, listing them individually is going to take up a lot more room, which means that they're going to be smaller print and it can be harder for your guests to read. So if you're listing them each individually as a higher guest count, it would probably, I should rephrase that. If you have a higher guest count, it's probably better to list them as couples or families versus individually because of just the space. As far as what looks cleaner, again, that's really going to depend on your guest count. The biggest piece, though, that I will say that you need to think about is whether or not you have given your guests an option for what meal choice they're going to have for the event. So, if on your invitations you've asked your guests if they want chicken or beef or the veggie meal or whatever it is, then you do need to do place cards, and they need to be individual place cards as opposed to a seating chart or couples place cards or escort cards. There is a difference between place cards or escort cards, but in today's world, we really typically just refer to them as place cards. So the reason you would need to do that is your caterer or your venue the wait staff will need to know what each guest has ordered. So you need to have a meal indicator on that place card. So Mrs. Jane Smith in a little C or a little chicken icon in the corner so the staff knows she ordered the chicken. Mr. Bob Smith, a little cow or a carrot if they ordered the vegetarian. So that can be a big difference between whether you list couples versus individuals when we're talking about place cards. Just another thing for you to think about, or whether you're going to do a seating chart versus place cards. So I love a seating chart. It's clean, it's easy. You don't have to worry about folding those cards and putting them out nice and even. I love making sure that they are nice and even rows. But if you offer a meal choice, then you obviously have to do the place cards instead of the seating chart. So there's not a super easy way to answer that. I think for your purposes, it's probably easiest to plot it out per couple versus per line. But if you only have a 20 to 50 guest count, then it might look a little strange if you do per couple because it's only going to be 10 to 25, 30 lines. So it really just depends on that guest count. And then also the breakdown of the guest last name. That might sound silly, but for every seating chart, of course, is going to have a variety of different last names. And I guess I should start by saying you absolutely, whatever you do, seating charts need to be alphabetical by last name. Do not do them by table. Unless you have a small wedding, 50 or under, you definitely want to do your seating chart alphabetically by last name. And again, I get it. When you look on Etsy, when you look on Pinterest, seating charts look better when they're done by table number because it's symmetrical. You have 8 people per table, 8, maybe 9. It's not going to change that much. So it looks so much more even and just perfectly placed when it's done by table number. But let me tell you, it will create such a bottleneck and be such a hassle for your guests to be finding their name when it's broken down by table number as opposed to by last name. So you don't want to have a lineup of guests trying to get into your reception area because they can only go one at a time while they're trying to search through every single table. So if you have a smaller guest count, it's very different. But if you have a larger guest count, and again, I say larger in this reference or in this capacity that we're talking about, 50 and up. Really, if you have more than 5 or 6 tables of guests, it's just going to be obnoxious. Again, you have to take my word on it. I have seen it happen over and over again. You want to do it alphabetical by last name. So not a super direct answer to your actual question, but a little bit more warning about some of the common mistakes that we see when doing seating charts. Number 3, we're thinking about doing a late night snack for the wedding. How do you go about talking to your venues? Okay, so I am assuming with this question that your venue is your caterer. So that's who you need to talk to about this. I guess I'll answer this in a couple of different ways. I'll assume that your venue is the caterer and providing your late night. Some caterers or venues will have late night menus that are already kind of put together for you. And so you simply pick a choice. And the kicker for this, though, is make sure that you're not doing it for 100% of your guest count. I typically recommend like 75%, but it's going to change a little bit depending on your breakdown of guests. If you have a lot of younger guests that you know are going to be drinking and dancing with you until the very end, then you want to definitely be at least at that 75%. If your guest list is a lot of older family members and it's a smaller portion that you anticipate staying later until the end, then you can go even lower, 50% or so, depending on what the venue recommends. I have never seen a late night snack or a late night station go undevoured, unattacked. I don't know what else to call it, but they are always popular, always appreciated, whether it's something relatively simple with like chips and dip or guac and queso, or you do something more elaborate or a heavier option. There's so many different options now, but I definitely see that it is worth it. So unless you think you have a significantly older crowd and the majority of your guests are either not drinkers or not going to stay till the end, again, I've never seen a late night station go untouched. So I think it's definitely worth it. Now, if your question was, how do you talk to your venue about bringing in outside catering? That's just something you're going to have to ask what their policy is. So we will often at some venues will have like pizza delivered or Taco Bell as a late night snack, something like that. And every venue and catering company is going to be a little bit different in what their policy is. So you just simply have to let them know like, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. Is that okay? Even venues that have like a no outside food policy will often make exceptions for the wedding cake. Of course, most of the time you're allowed to bring in an outside wedding cake. And sometimes they do for late night snacks, especially if it's something specific that they cannot provide. So again, Taco Bell, if they don't do tacos and you really want to have tacos, that might be something that they would be willing to let you bring in. You will likely need to pay a little bit of a fee for that. And that's to make sure that they have all of the plates and napkins and flatware, anything that they need. And also, it includes a little bit for covering the staff, depending on your account. I have a friend that she works in corporate, so the counts are very different, but she had a corporate event that they added in an outside, I think it was a chocolate fountain or something along those lines. But their count was 800 people, 800 plus people. Last minute, they're like, oh, we need plates, we need napkins. And 800 plates is not something that most places have just like laying around cleaned and ready to go. So they had to scramble to get that for them. And they didn't staff the event for cleaning up all of those 800 plates. So the client was a little annoyed that there were plates stacked up and it took them a while to get to it because they didn't have that planned. So there is a piece to it where you need to make sure that they have the staff to be able to clean up and prep and blah, blah, blah. So I know a lot of times it's frustrating when you see those added fees like cake cutting fees and added fees for outside vendors, but that's a little behind the scenes of what that is from, why that comes into play, because people will surprise you and all of a sudden have 800 extra plates that you need. So hopefully that helps answer your question there. Number 4, my friend's ceremony pictures have a ton of guests leaning in the aisle with their phones out. And that really bothers me. It bothers all of us. We already plan on having an unplugged sign, but do you have any other tips for making sure that this doesn't happen? This is a really tough one. And if there are any photographers or videographers listening, I feel you on this because it doesn't matter if you have a sign. Honestly, I love the signs. They look great. People walk right past them, don't think about it. And I think the problem is in a lot of people's minds, they see an unplugged photo or an unplugged sign and they think, oh, I need to silence my phone. They don't think, don't take pictures. I'm not sure what it is, but I think that's the reason why we still see people hanging out in the aisle. They just don't make that connection. And if you're not surrounded by people getting married and seeing, I see these photos in my feed all day long. But if you're not surrounded by weddings, it's probably not something you think about. You just want to capture the moment. I get the feeling for it. We've all been in a moment where something happens and we all want to like reach for our phone to grab a picture of it, right? So we all have that instinct. The problem is the signs as people are coming into the ceremony don't do much. The best option I have seen, but it is still very limited in how much it helps, is having your officiant walk down the aisle first before processional music happens, make an announcement that there's different ways you can Google it, how to phrase it, different ways that they can kindly ask guests leave their phones in their pockets, but make sure that they reference photos will be shared with the guests, or we want to make sure you're present with us and not having your phones out. So please save taking photos. You know what I mean? Have them mention specifically that it's for taking photos, not just we don't want your ringers going off. I don't know why that's still something that people make that connection. And I think that's why we see it's usually some of the older guests that are in the aisle with their phones out. Now, that said, your officiant does need to go down first, because I've had people that plan to make this announcement, but if it's after you've already gone down the aisle, it's too late. That's the problem with, I love the moments. We've had a few clients have their officiant make an announcement like, all right, we're going to have one moment where everybody takes a picture. So get ready, here we go. And then you do a cute pose. I love that moment, but the problem is you're already down the aisle at that point. So the phones have already been out. You've already potentially had that person in the background taking the pictures and all of that. So that's the issue there. The one thing that I have not tested this personally yet, we have not done this at a wedding yet, but the only thing that I can think would be an absolute, like, this is going to catch everybody, because even if you have a photographer that's like, okay, I'm going to catch them. Don't worry. Like I'm not shy. I'll tell them to put it away. They're not, if they're on the other side of you and the person with the camera is behind you, or, you know what I mean? Like, they're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to put their camera down and miss the moment so they can tell the guest to put their phone down. You know what I mean? So the only thing that I've thought of, and I would love to test this out, I might even make it a template in the membership coming up soon, but I would love to create some kind of like printout and do it in a funny but nice way where it is something that is intended. You know how you use like reserve signs for the first couple of rows? Something like that, but it says like, reserve for those who promise not to take their phones out. Or I need to chat GPT it and get like a good phrase for it. But like basically reserve the aisle seats for something that says reserve for those who promise to keep their phones in their pockets or keep their cameras in their pockets, so that they know you're talking about photos. We're not talking about ringers, we're talking about photos. And I think that's the only way. And then ask that person is sitting there, if they know they are that person that is not going to be able to control themselves, they need to take their phone out and take pictures, at very least, they are not right in that aisle row ruining your pictures, right? If they're on the other side, or if they're even in the back, that's okay. You can easily cut them out. You can crop it out. But that's the only thing that I can think of. And I'm dying to try it. So if anybody does test that out, let me know. I would love to know if it works or not. And again, I need to chat GPT some different phrasing for that, so we can come up with a nice way to tell people who is and who is not allowed in that aisle seat. All right, number 5, is it normal to do wedding dress try-ons without purchasing that day? I just want to get a feel for what looks good on my body shape, and I feel like they will act like I'm wasting their time. Okay, this one is a little bit tricky without being able to ask a couple of follow-up questions, but I'm assuming you mean you want to just go to a bridal shop and try on some dresses to get different styles, but without feeling the pressure of purchasing a dress. And this kind of ties into another question. We didn't get this question specifically today, but I do see it pretty often, whether it's a question or just general frustration about why bridal shops charge for appointments. And I think this question is actually a great answer to why bridal shops will charge for appointments. And it's not that they want to charge you or like they're trying to make money wherever they can. It's because unfortunately people make appointments at bridal shops just to play around. And talking to a friend of mine that owns a shop, she would have people come in all the time and not one person in their group was engaged. And they just wanted to try on gown after gown after gown. And, they'd say something like, oh, well, when we do get engaged, we'll make sure to come back here. And I love that intent. But for her in the meantime, it's like, well, I'm paying my staff members this time to be here and they're limited with how many appointments they can make and blah, blah, blah. So that's why a lot of dress shops will charge for an appointment because they want to have a little bit of that barrier to make sure that the people that are coming in are actually looking for dresses. You're going to see the same thing when you start doing cake appointments, cake tasting appointments, and some caterers will charge for their tastings. Most of these, I guess I should say some of these vendors will apply a portion, if not all of that charge to either your final dress or your cake deposit or your catering deposit, because obviously you've proven that you're a real customer if you end up buying your dress there or if you move forward with them. So most of the time it will credit towards that. But in situations like you're in, if you just want to try things on, I think that is, be honest with them. So say, hey, I'm really not ready mentally or financially to purchase my dress yet, but I want to know what styles I like. Is there a charge for an appointment for us to come in? And then you don't have to feel, if you're honest with them and saying, hey, I'm really not ready for this, you feel like, okay, I have paid for their time. So you don't have to feel like you're taking advantage of their time. But they also know that they're not going to put the pressure on you. And I'm not going to say that if you love a dress, they're not going to put a little pressure on you, but they will back off a little bit. Now, of course, they're going to hope that you're going to come back. They're going to follow up. They're going to do their whole sales pitch, but at least that way you feel like you're not wasting their time. You've compensated them for being there, even if you have zero intentions on purchasing a dress that day. And you're being honest with them so that they know not to be too pushy with you. So I think that's a good, fair option. And if the dress shop you have in mind doesn't normally do a charge, still let them know. Say, hey, I really am not ready to buy a dress. I'm just not ready to buy. Some of us have a hard time going in and trying things on, right? And so you just need to go in once or twice just to feel comfortable before you can really start letting it soak in. So be honest with them, let them know you're not ready, but you want to make sure you're not taking advantage. The other thing they might tell you is that you can come in during their off hours and take all the time that you want, and you don't feel the pressure again because you're not taking a spot during like their prime shopping hours, if that makes sense. So hopefully that helps answer your question there. Question number 6, my fiance wants to do a garter toss, but I'm not even sure if I want to toss the bouquet. What are your thoughts on this? I feel like it's cringe and no one does it anymore. Bouquet tosses and garter tosses are definitely not super common like they were a while back. Now, I will say I've been doing this 20 years. Garter tosses were never super common. It was definitely more popular to do a bouquet toss back when I started. But it was not even 50-50 with the garter component of it. The biggest thing that has me worried with your question is the fact that you feel like it's cringe. If you feel like it's cringe before even doing it, it is 1,000% going to be cringe. I've seen it done with like the perfect group, the perfect couple. It's just something fun and funny and the crowd embraces it and it's great. I have seen the exact opposite where everybody is just like, that cringe you can feel, that deep in your gut cringe. And it's like, when will this be over? If you don't know 1,000% that you're in that first category, that you and your fiance and your group can pull it off, then I think it's something you want to avoid. And you know what I mean? Like there are some people, some groups that just have that more like you do silly things and your family expects it and they know that that's just like, oh, that's them. This is what they want to do. So when it comes to the garter specifically, I think that's something that you definitely want to take in mind. If you are shy at all, if you are self-conscious at all, I say skip it because those two things right away is going to direct you immediately to cringe. if you're performers, if you love being the center of attention, if you know your family loves a good game or a good funny moment, then I think it could be fun and something that you do. Talk to your DJ about it or your MC or band leader, because they'll help you with how to phrase it, how to get people out there, what's the flow of it. But again, I think just like in your gut, just based on how you phrase this question, I would be nervous. I would be nervous for you. Now, the bouquet toss is a little bit different. The internal cringe is a bit different in that it's not directed at you guys, but there could be potential cringe on the single women at your event. So I always caution our couples to think about how many single women are going to be at your event if you're doing this in the traditional way, where the DJ says, all the single ladies, and then the song plays and all that, come out on the dance floor. If you have like 2 or 3 single women that are at your wedding, it's going to be super cringe for them and they're going to be so uncomfortable. But what you can do if you really want to toss the bouquet and you don't have most of your guests are older or already married, you can do a bouquet toss with all of the women in the room. Again, just talk to your DJ or your MC and say, all of our ladies coming out here, and come up with something cute for whatever it means for who catches the bouquet. It doesn't necessarily have to mean you're the next to get married, all of that history and meaning behind it. You can make it something else. We've also had couples, if you do an anniversary dance, which is where you start dancing, you as a couple start dancing and the DJ asks all the other couples, married couples in the room to dance with you. And then they slowly ask couples to leave the floor as they reach, so if you've been married less than a year, please leave the floor. If you've been married less than 5 years, please leave the dance floor, with the 2 of you as an exception. So eventually you are dancing with the couple that has been married the longest. And we've had couples then give them the bouquet. So if you want to do something with your bouquet, that's a nice way to do that without feeling like you're either pulling all your single people and putting them on blast there, or feeling like you're calling people out or anything like that. It's kind of a nice way to do it. If you are doing a toss bouquet though, or if you're doing a bouquet toss, talk to your florist about having a toss bouquet. I think a lot of couples or a lot of brides don't know that 99% of the time when the bouquet is tossed, like the traditional toss, it's a separate bouquet. It's not the bouquet that you have in all your photos and that you walk down the aisle with. They can put together a much smaller version. A lot of times it is 100% of the time it should be at a much lower cost than your bouquet. Most of the time, florists will do it for free as long as you're not too particular on what it looks like. That way they just use the extra flowers that they have from the event and they will just put something together. So again, you can't have any guarantees on like colors or size or anything like that, but you don't really need that for a toss bouquet. Okay, that was my rant on toss bouquets and garter tosses. Question number 7, if you send out a save the date, is it okay to not send a formal invitation later? I'm trying to figure out what's best and I don't want to cause confusion. Okay, the Emily Post answer is no, it's not okay. If somebody gets a save the date, they get an invitation, but that's not how life works sometimes, right? Either sometimes the common reason I see is I left my job and I never talked to those people anymore, or so-and-so did something else and we don't want to invite them anymore. So there are definitely reasons why you would want to not invite somebody that received a save the date. The tricky part is you do need to acknowledge it. It sucks, but you sent them a save the date. They have it in their calendar. They are expecting an invitation. The best thing I can do right now, and I know this doesn't help the person that sent this question in, is be cautious with who you send your save the dates to. You can invite somebody that didn't get a save the date. So if you have coworkers, if you have second cousins, if you have friends that you're not sure you're going to want to be friends with in the future, don't send them a save the date. That doesn't mean that you can't invite them, but it means that you're not going to be in this situation in the future if you decide not to invite them. So I know this doesn't help the person that asked the question specifically, but again, you do not have to send everybody on your guest list to save the date. So you can be cautious about that and still invite them, even if they didn't get the save the date. Now, there are situations where it just simply, they're not going to be invited. Again, whether it's a falling out or something with your guest list you had to change, I know that there are people that would say, no, just ignore it. They won't follow up. And I think it really depends on your relationship with that person, your current relationship with that person, and what you want your relationship to be with in the future. If this is somebody that has done you wrong, you want to X them out, you don't care if they're mad at you for not inviting them, then that's one route you could take. Just ignore the situation. They probably won't follow up with you about not getting the invite. If this is somebody that needs or want to have in your life following the wedding, you really should address it. Now you can, whatever the reason is that you're not inviting them, obviously talk to them and tell them the truth. You can tell them you've had to cut your budget back and decrease your guest count. Your venue's at capacity. Your parents invited more people than you thought, and now you've gone over your budget or your capacity. But you really should address it. Again, especially if this is somebody that you will be seeing in the future. And you don't want to like totally like ruin the relationship with. You should let them know. Otherwise, your wedding is likely in their calendar and they're going to be really confused when they don't get an invitation. And then it can be really awkward, especially like, let's say the week before they know people are talking about going to the wedding and they say, hey, we never got anything to RSVP, or they call you out on it. Now you have to address it, and it could be super awkward. So as uncomfortable as it is, think about the relationship and I say acknowledge it. At least if you have to take them off the list, acknowledge it in the nicest way that you possibly can, and then hopefully everything will be fine moving forward. Best case scenario though, of course, avoid over sending that save the date in the first place. And the final question, number 8, when hiring your day of coordinator, what is most important thing to consider? And of course, my answer is going to be experience. I think in any vendor category, experience is going to be, above all, the most important thing that you should be looking for. Weddings are crazy. Wedding days are insane. And it doesn't matter how much schooling you've done in whatever category, how you've been to film school, you've photography, you've done X number of planning programs. Until you get into certain experiences on wedding days, that's how you learn in this industry. Again, across all vendor categories. That's how you really learn what to expect and how to react and what questions to ask in the pre-wedding meetings and what to talk to the other vendors about before and what to put in your pack as you're packing up for the wedding day. So experience by far is the most important thing. Another component I think is how they work with other vendors. And how they view their role, especially as a day of coordinator. One of the tricky things can be, well, day of coordinating, of course, I'm not going to go into my whole spiel about how it's to see blah, blah, blah. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than just showing up that day. But I look at our role as like we're the team captain of the vendors. I'm not trying to be the photographer. I'm not trying to be the DJ or back in the kitchen telling the chef what to do. But my goal is to make sure that everybody on the team has what they need to just like knock it out of the park. So talking to them about how they approach working with other vendors, I think would be a good insight into how they view that they're not the ones just trying to boss everybody around, but they're really trying to take that team approach, if that makes sense. Communication, asking what their communication style is. And this isn't, this is just more to find out, does it match what you prefer or what your expectations for communication are? Not that like one way is right or one way is wrong. If you prefer texting, you want to find out, does this coordinator, are they okay with texting, or do they prefer only email? If you hate email, then that's probably not the person you want to go with. Personality and vibes for some of your vendors is going to make a big difference. Your photographer is going to be stalking you all day. So you want to make sure personality that you vibe with them. Your coordinator on the day of, definitely the same. So your baker, your invitations, your florist, you're not really interacting with them on the wedding day. Not to say that you don't want to get along with them. Obviously, hopefully you'll be friends with all of your vendors. But if they rub you the wrong way, it's not going to really impact your day as it will your photographer and your day of coordinator. So make sure that you vibe and you feel comfortable with them. I know it can be hard on initial meetings, but that's definitely something important. And then I think finally talking to them about what their process is. So, how do they catch up on the plans? For me, we start working with couples 2 months before the wedding. Now, up until that point, we're still emailing, we're talking about vendor referrals. So, it's not like there's no communication until that point, but that's when we really start digging in. If somebody tells you that they meet with you the week of the wedding or they just show up that day, that is the biggest red flag. There is no way a professional is going to do that. I would never do that unless, like, for some reason we weren't contracted until like a week or two out, because you need to plan 90%, maybe that might be a bit high, at least 70% of what we do as day of coordinators or event managers or month of coordinators, whatever you want to call it. Most of our work is done in those 2 months beforehand, not on the day of the event itself. We're trying to put out the potential fires before we even see them. And so if somebody says, oh, I'm just going to come in and set things up for you, you're not really looking for a day of coordinator. You're looking for manual labor, for lack of a better phrase. You're looking for just a body to put something together for you. A coordinator is going to help you with your timeline, help you with the logistics, help you with the layout, help you with the details and logistics of the day, not just set things up for you. So just making sure that you're figuring out that distinction. Some people truly just need that manual labor component. They just need somebody there to set the stuff up. But most couples, when we talk day of coordination, again, month of, day of management, whatever we're calling it, they're looking for more than that. You're looking for somebody to really help you through the planning process. And so you want to know that you're connecting with them well enough in advance. All right, those were our 8 questions. I thought that, like, okay, maybe we can make this 10 minutes if I extend my answers a little bit. I didn't mean to talk so long about each one, but hopefully you guys found this helpful. And I am hoping to do more of these in the future. So make sure that you follow, again, over at Planning Collectively. Don't forget that LY, because that's where I will post for questions when we do this next Q&A session again. Of course, if you have more specific questions that you want answered, find me over in the membership, planningcollective.com/membership. And thank you for joining here. I will see you in the next episode.